Welcome to my History Vault YouTube channel. Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988. The Iran-Iraq War was a brutal conflict between Iran and Iraq that lasted from September 22, 1980, to August 20, 1988. It was one of the longest and bloodiest wars of the 20th century, characterized by trench warfare, chemical weapons, and massive human and material losses. Description and background. Causes of the war. Border disputes, especially over the Shatt al-Arab waterway. Iraq's ambition to become the dominant power in the region. Saddam Hussein's fear of Iran's Islamic Revolution, 1979, spreading to Iraq's Shiite majority. Iran's support for Shiite dissidents in Iraq. War phases. Iraq's invasion, 1980 to 1982. Saddam Hussein launched a surprise attack, capturing Iranian territory. However, Iran regrouped and pushed Iraq back. Iranian counteroffensive, 1982 to 1986. Iran launched human wave attacks and recaptured most of its land, pushing into Iraq. Stalemate and attrition, 1986 to 1988. Both sides suffered heavy losses, using chemical weapons and missile strikes on cities. UN Resolution 598 and ceasefire, 1988. The war ended in a ceasefire, with no clear winner. Weapons used. Conventional weapons. Small arms, AK-47s, M16s, G3 rifles, FN/FALs. Tanks, T-55, T-62, T-72, Iraq, Chieftain tanks, Iran. Artillery, howitzers, Katyusha rockets, Scud missiles. Aircraft, F-4 Phantom, F-5 Tiger, and F-14 Tomcats, Iran, MiG-21, MiG-23, MiG-25, Su-22, Iraq. Naval warfare, speedboats, mines, missile boats, French Exocet missiles. Missiles, Iraq launched Scud missile attacks on Iranian cities. Unconventional weapons. Chemical weapons, Iraq used mustard gas, nerve agents, sarin, tabun, against Iranian forces and civilians. Human wave attacks, Iran used large numbers of volunteer fighters, including teenagers, to overwhelm Iraqi defenses. Guerrilla warfare, Iran supported Iraqi Shiite and Kurdish insurgents. Losses and casualties. Iran, estimated 500,000 to 750,000 dead, with around 1 million wounded. Iraq, estimated 250,000 to 500,000 dead, with around 400,000 wounded. Civilians, tens of thousands killed, mainly due to chemical attacks and missile strikes. Economic cost, over $1 trillion in total damage, crippling both economies. Aftermath and impact. No major territorial changes, as both countries retained their pre-war borders. Iraq's economy was devastated, leading to its invasion of Kuwait in 1990. Iran remained under economic sanctions and political isolation. The war solidified Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, as a dominant military and political force. This war remains one of the most devastating conflicts in modern history, with lasting effects on Middle Eastern politics and military strategies. Key battles and events. Iraqi invasion and initial advances, 1980 to 1982. September 22, 1980, Iraq launched a surprise attack, bombing Iranian air bases and advancing into Iranian territory. Battle of Khorramshahr, 1980 to 1981. One of the bloodiest battles of the war, Iran lost the city, but later recaptured it in 1982 after intense fighting. Operation Sultan 10, 1980. Iran's Air Force launched deep strikes into Iraq, targeting military bases. Iranian counteroffensive, 1982 to 1984. Operation Ramadan, 1982. Iran pushed into Iraqi territory but suffered heavy losses. Tanker War, 1984 to 1988. Both sides attacked oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, disrupting global oil supplies. Chemical warfare begins. 1983 to 1988 Iraq began large-scale use of mustard gas and nerve agents, particularly against Iranian troops and Kurdish civilians. Stalemate and city attacks, 1984 to 1987. War of the Cities, 1984 to 1987 Both nations launched missile attacks on each other's cities, targeting civilians. Operation Karbala 5, 1987 Iran's attempt to capture Basra, one of the deadliest battles, but ultimately a failure. Final phase and ceasefire, 1988. Operation Mersad, 1988 Iraq, supported by the US and Gulf states, launched a counterattack. Iran's resistance weakened due to war fatigue. Iran accepts UN Resolution 598, July 1988 The war officially ended in a ceasefire on August 20, 1988. International involvement. United States supported Iraq with intelligence, weapons, and economic aid, while also secretly selling arms to Iran-Contra affair. Soviet Union provided Iraq with military support, including tanks and aircraft. France supplied Iraq with Mirage F-1 fighter jets and Exocet missiles. China and North Korea supplied weapons to both sides. Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait provided financial support to Iraq. War crimes and controversies. Use of chemical weapons. Iraq used nerve gas against Iranian troops and civilians. Mass executions. Both sides executed prisoners of war and political opponents. Kurdish genocide, Anfal campaign, 1988 Iraq massacred 50,000 to 100,000 Kurdish civilians. U.S. attack on Iran Air Flight 655, 1988 A U.S. Navy warship shot down an Iranian civilian airplane, killing 290 passengers. Consequences of the war. Political, strengthened Iran's theocratic rule and expanded its military power. Iraq, weakened, later invaded Kuwait, 1990. Economic, both countries suffered severe economic decline, with Iran facing sanctions and Iraq accumulating huge debt. Regional impact, the war led to increased instability in the Middle East and laid the groundwork for future conflicts, including the Gulf War, 1991. The Iran-Iraq War remains one of the deadliest conflicts in modern history, with long-lasting consequences for both nations and the region.